Welcome to Picks with the Professor, the show where a real statistics professor gives you sports betting tips. I am your host, Professor Sides, and for the latest updates, information, and picks, you can follow me on Twitter at Professor Sides. Today is Thursday, August 4th, 2022. This episode covers all of today's Major League Baseball games. In case you're new here, I built a mathematical model for win probability and totals using hitter and pitcher projections I've created along with weather data in order to make one side pick and one total pick on every game played 7 days a week, though there are no Sunday shows. That doesn't mean I recommend you do the same, as my goal in this episode is to share key information about today's games, give you a few things to think on, and explain whether the model or I like or don't like a certain play in order for you to come up with picks you are comfortable with. I never recommend blindly tailing or fading any pick, but rather to hear the justifications, thought processes, to make sure you're fully on board with me or against me before investing your hard-earned money. As I go through my plays, remember that there are no locks in gambling, so what I'll give you are loves, likes, and leans to indicate my confidence level with respect to scaling wagers. And as always, please remember that good and bad variance will occur. So as much as I'd like to say it'll be profitable each and every day, that is an impossible reality for any gambler. Yesterday, so far this week, side plays have been going really well. I kind of tweeted about this. If we can get those B picks rolling, they seem to be doing a little bit better. Those B money line picks, A money line picks have been fantastic all season. That's a nice little 1-2 punch. It's a lot of fun. Totals have struggled lately. The total markets have been a lot harder to peg lately. You've heard me say this for at least the last month or so, and those have definitely struggled. Early on in the season, it was real easy to take advantage of where the books were not adjusting quickly to how the new ball was reacting in colder weather. But lately, a lot of times it just feels like the numbers spot on, and I just think it's hard to take advantage of it. And that's an important thing to remember, right? You always hear things like you're not playing teams, you're playing numbers. And I get the sentiment behind that. I don't think it communicates the point very well, right? I think the better communication is you're playing teams and numbers, right? And that's, of course, the implication. But to be, clear about it, when you're playing a money line, it's all about the price. You hear me talk about this a lot, but also it's about the team, right? It's teams at certain prices, and when you get to totals, it's you're playing teams and weather and the stadium at certain prices, and there's a lot of variables there. And as the season's gone along, I just think the books have done a really good job of picking really accurate numbers where there's just not a lot of great edges to exploit, and that's why you've seen me with a whole lot less confidence in a lot of totals. The two I liked the most yesterday didn't quite get there. It's just been a lot harder of a market to play. So the money lines, of course, have been focusing the vast majority of the investments. I still have a handful of totals that I think are solid plays, but in general, the money lines are where I think there's just still edges to be found, where books aren't treating teams appropriately, but totals are just a lot harder to find edges at, I think, at this point in the season. Like I said, I think they've done a really good job with that. So just something to keep in mind. Again, things you've heard me say if you've been listening for any time. But before we get to today's slate, some reminders. Please hit that like button if you're on YouTube. Also, if you aren't yet, please consider subscribing or following. It's free, and the only way, assuming you turn notifications on, to ensure you don't miss any of the college basketball, MLB, or college football content that this channel provides. Share with a friend if you know others in the game. Hit me up on Twitter. Drop a comment from YouTube. I love those. Try to respond to as many as I can. I'm also partner with Horse Racing Today if you like to gamble on horse racing. You can find their stuff at horseracingtoday.net. They are a team of 5 with over 125 years of combined experience in handicapping horse races. There isn't an angle they don't know or bias they can't identify. Today, their favorite play is over at Saratoga Race 8. Check out their YouTube shows, the website. Links are in the description. A few afternoon games today. We'll start off at 12:35 Eastern with the Brewers and the Pirates. The Pirates keep winning in this series. Had them these last 2 days. I'll be on the Pirates again at plus 220. As before, it's just a lean. It's a C grade pick. A couple reasons for that. Number one, you never feel overly confident fading a pitcher as good as Brandon Woodruff. And on top of that, given that we're at plus 220, we're going to win a decent amount of units here if we win. So there's no need to overinvest in an edge that I think is there. I think it's not a bad play. It's just not a great one, in my opinion. It's Pirates or pass, just like it's been. That doesn't mean the Brewers don't win. The Brewers are still more likely to win, but they've been more likely to win and they don't. It's just a reminder that baseball's wonky. Nobody expected Shohei Ohtani to lose his last 2 starts. And, of course, as we talked about, nobody expected the Mets to lose a couple days ago to the shell of the Nationals against Jacob deGrom. So baseball's random. This price is too high on the Brewers. I don't think it's worth an investment. And like I'm always saying, I don't think it's worth the first 5. I don't think it's worth a run line. I don't think it's worth any of that because all those derivative markets tend to have similar value. And I think the value's a negative expected value play on the Brewers. Doesn't mean they won't win. it just means the price is too high in this situation. Zach Thompson isn't good. 5.09 ERA, advanced metrics say maybe a little better than that, but he rates as one of the worst starting pitchers that gets a rating in my database. So again, a pretty solid edge with regards to pitching for the Brewers. Of course, a big edge in the bullpen as well whenever we get to those guys. And an edge on offense for the Brewers as well. Again, Brewers have massive edges in this game. It's just not enough to justify this price, like minus 250. I just think that's too much. Model says it should be 209. So again, I'm comfortable laying a number that starts with a 2 with the Brewers. Just not comfortable with the mid 2s. So model says 209 plus 220 is a decent price for the Pirates. Again, as Pirates are past, it's a lean for me on them. Don't need to be invested, but I think it's an okay look. But I love this over. It's my favorite total of the day. Starting us off here, over 8. Juice isn't too bad. Model thinks 8.9. We've seen a lot of runs in this series here already. It's something, again, I think Woodruff is a perfectly fine pitcher, but the Pirates have been scoring runs somehow. The Brewers should be able to score. Thompson isn't that good, and the relievers aren't that good. So I'd be surprised if the Brewers don't score that many runs. They'll put up a few. The Pirates can put up a few. Should be maybe a slightly higher scoring game. Maybe the Pirates pull it out. But either way, I think getting to 8 won't be that difficult in this game. And then I think I got a good chance to get over as well. It's going to be a warm one in Pittsburgh. We're going to be in the upper 80s, close to 90 degrees by the time this game ends. Wind will be blowing across, maybe a little bit out by the end, giving us a boost. But if nothing else, even if there is no wind effect, the warmth here should make the ball fly. I see a handful of home runs, especially as the day moves along and the pitchers have to get through the lineup a second, maybe third time, and or we get to the bullpens. Like I said, I think a lot of runs here. I think this total should be at least 8.5, maybe 9. I'm not sure I would hang 9 on this one, but I would at least be hanging 8.5. 8's one of the bigger edges on the board here. My favorite total play today is this over to kick us off in the morning if you're not in the Eastern time zone, or just after lunch if you are. Game one of a doubleheader in St. Louis, Cubs and Cardinals. It'll be fairly warm in St. Louis, low 80s throughout this one. There is some lingering rain, probably not going to affect things too much, maybe just a brief shower, but they should be able to play through it is what it appears to be at the moment. You never really know, of course, until you get a lot closer to game time, but hopefully nothing going to deter us from this doubleheader. Slight breeze blowing out, but it should stay under 5 miles an hour. Marcus Stroman versus Miles Michaelis, two pitchers that both get better than 90 grades, according to the model. Michaelis has a much better ERA than Stroman on the season, but the advanced metric actually favors Stroman in this one. Talked a little bit about Michaelis yesterday. I don't think he's as good as that ERA. I still think he's good, absolutely. I think both pitchers are pretty good. It's kind of a wash with regards to the starting pitcher in this game, in my opinion. The bullpen, of course, though, favors the Cardinals a ton, especially given the recent trades that the Cubs have made, weakening their relievers. Offensively, the Cubs were never solid to begin with. They didn't really trade anybody away, but they've always been kind of a below-average type offense. And the Cardinals' offense, of course, is pretty solid. Cardinals have a huge edge here. You do have to wonder about if the Cardinals are going to play all their players in both games. You never really know how that's going to play out with doubleheaders, but then the same thing could happen with the Cubs. They only have a couple good hitters. Contreras might not play in both games, that sort of thing. So you kind of have the same story on both sides. In general, assuming it's not a weird situation where the Cardinals rest some of their key guys in this game, but not, the Cubs don't. The Cardinals should have pretty big edges here, and I'm very comfortable laying a price with them like minus 152. It's an A-grade play for me on the Cardinals. The Cubs several times in the little hot streak, and that worked out well, but I don't think they're good enough to justify this price. The model says it should be Cardinals minus 178. And so I'm all over the Cardinals here in game one. A-grade pick for me at a price in the 150s. And I will take a flyer on the under at 7.5, but this one I think is priced perfectly. The model says 7.5, and I think it's a total market that's not really worth your time. 3:45 Eastern, Dodgers at the Giants. Back-to-back A-grade winners on the Dodgers. I mean, it's nice when things work out just like you hope and just like you project, right? Sometimes it doesn't, especially with humans involved, especially with sports, right? Especially with balls and how they can bounce funny. But I mean, I just have to laugh at the prices that we saw the Dodgers these first 3 days. The Dodgers are just light years better than the Giants. These prices made no sense. We got 3 easy A-grade winners. The Dodgers, again, have been good to us when we've had edges. Today, I think it's actually priced fairly well, though. So it's unfortunate that we don't get a fourth massive edge on the Dodgers here, but I think this one's priced fairly well. The model says Dodgers minus 206. I'm comfortable laying a price that starts with a 2 with the Dodgers. I just want it to be closer to 200 than anything else. At 212, I'll play the Dodgers again, but it's not a pick I really like. Again, I don't think there's a lot of edge on this one at this price. I think either side you look at is fine. If you want to take a shot with a dog, I don't think that's crazy because these odds are pretty good. If you think the Dodgers are the better team, you want to play them, that's fine too. I just would say don't get too carried away. It's better than the Brewers. I'd rather play the Dodgers if you're looking for an afternoon big favorite than the Brewers, but I just don't think 212 is a good enough price to really be that excited about. It's not a price to just, go too heavy on, in my opinion. Dodgers should win this one. They have all the same edges we've been talking about all week with them. They have an edge with regards to starting pitching today. They have an edge with the bullpen. They have an edge with the offense as well. The Giants, again, don't hit lefties as well as they hit righties because they're so left-handed heavy, and so that's accounted for in the model as well. It's just this price is just really high. Kershaw's good. I'll take a chance with him at minus 212, but it's not what I'm too excited about, so just a lean on the Dodgers here. With regards to total, I'll go under 8 with just a lean, though. Again, another one I think is priced really well. Jacob Judas for the Giants isn't that bad. 2.78 ERA. Now, the advanced metrics have him about a full run higher than that, but he's an average starting pitcher. And, of course, we know how good Kershaw is. It'll be chilly in San Francisco as always. Low 60s there, kind of a standard. It doesn't matter, pick the random summer month, and it never seems to get, too warm out there. But I think it's a pretty well-priced total at 8. It's not one I want to be too heavily invested in. The Dodgers can go out there and score 8 runs by themselves, but Junis is good enough to limit the Dodgers to maybe only, 3 runs, 4 runs. And if they get 4 runs off of him, 8's really right in play. I mean, the Dodgers should score a few more off the bullpen. The Giants probably eke out a couple. I mean, something like 6-2 seems perfectly reasonable. So it's really hard to find an edge there on this total, in my opinion. Well-priced game all around in this one. We took advantage of some edges there on the Dodgers earlier in the week, but on this one, I think there's better investment opportunities. 4:05 Eastern first pitch. A's at the Angels. It'll be a warm one in Anaheim for their standards, at least low 80s. Winds will be blowing out to center field in the 5 to 10 mile an hour range. I already talked about it at the top of the show, or earlier in the show here. A's with that big winner last night against Ohtani. Another situation where I was telling y'all, it's A's or pass. The prices were just too high. It wasn't worth that risk. That the risk was higher than the payout was. Obviously, we were all a little surprised, even those of us with A's tickets, surprised when the A's pulled it off. But that's what we said. You're playing teams and prices, and the prices matter here. But today, I think the price isn't that bad on the Angels. It's kind of like we had projected earlier on in the series. I think this pitching matchup is fairly comparable. And if you get a fairly comparable starting pitching matchup, I'm okay laying small prices with the Angels. They are the better team. Just because they didn't get it done last night doesn't mean a whole lot. Another records are getting close to each other, but the Angels still have more talent than the A's do. You do worry about at some point about effort motivation, but for the most part, that doesn't really play as big of an effect as we like to think it does here on our couches because we're thinking about these things, but these guys are going out there playing for their next contract. They're going out playing for playing time. I mean, these guys go out and play hard most every day. You do have a little bit of baseball's a long season and little mental lapses and things like that, but it's hard to really project when those happen. And those are just more about the grind more than a team giving up, at least at this point in the season. Even when we get to the later part of the season into September, again, the guys that are there for the most part are playing for something. And so the front office might be tanking and giving up, but the players tend to be playing hard. So as much as the Angel season is a wash, I'm not really buying into this narrative, that the Angels have just thrown in the towel. Like I said, I think they're going out and playing hard. They aren't a very good team. I've been saying that all year. They've been overrated. We faded them a lot. But today, I think the price isn't that bad on them. Again, I think these starting pitchers are a wash. Blackburn is solid. Maybe slightly better than league average. Jansen Junk, so far, so good in his 6 innings. In the advanced metrics, he's been fantastic. Of course, it's not a lot of work. But I think both these guys are around average, maybe a little bit better. Relief core-wise now, we're talking about maybe a wash. Offensively, I still think the Angels are a little bit better. At home, I think minus 113 isn't a bad price on Anaheim. It's a B-grade pick for me. Not to say that they necessarily win. I just think they win more times than they lose, and a short number like this is a decent investment. If I could get something, better than this, more in the minus 105 to even money range, would be an A grade. I don't think we see that. I can't see a lot of Oakland money coming in. That would be a little surprising to me, but if it happens, that would be an A grade play. But at this point, I still think minus 113 is worth an investment here on the Angels. In another situation where I think the total market's priced fairly well, I'll take a flyer on the over 8. Model says 8.4, but I think it's priced fairly well. I think 8 probably makes a little bit more sense than 8.5, but it is juiced to the over, so it kind of aligns with the model. Says I think over slightly more likely than under, but not by enough to get excited about, and probably not by enough to overcome the juice here and the hold that the sportsbooks have in placing these totals. I just don't think it's a great investment opportunity. But I think the Angels, especially if you're getting, like I said, a price in the at least minus 115 or better, it's worth an investment, maybe up to minus 20. But by the time you get to minus 120, I think you're really starting to lose a lot of the value in this one. 4:10 Eastern first pitch, Rockies and the Padres. Couldn't get that under last night. I believe it was a 5-run first inning. And after that first inning, things settled into the game that I expected. I think the remainder of the game only had 5 runs. We saw it 2 nights ago as well in game 2 of that doubleheader. There were 4 runs in the first inning. And then after that, there was only 1 run the rest of the game. So I'm going back to the under here today in San Diego, under 7.5 at minus 103. It's good odds for us here with a B grade play. Really, you got to hold your breath for the first inning. As long as we can escape the first inning, we're probably set. But if we end up with, a 4 or 5 spot here in the first, we're gonna have to really, sweat this one out. First innings have been the problems. That's the kind of the bugaboo here. If you feel like you're concerned about that, maybe you wait and you live bet after the first inning. In general, though, I don't make too much of it. I think it's just random variability. There were some runs in the first. There's going to be more runs in the first. People always talk about first run bets, first inning, if there will be a run or not bets. Remember, there's always more likely to be a run in the first than any other inning in the game because it's the only time that you guarantee the top of each lineup to play. So if you say, hypothetically, let's say you think there's going to be exactly 9 runs in a game and you think the home team will bat, you would never project 1 run exactly every inning. You project more in the first and probably more at the back end a little bit. But you expect the second, the third innings to be the lowest scoring innings, and then the fourth and fifth, et cetera, slowly creeping up until who knows how the bullpens play out for each team. The first inning is more likely to have runs, but I think what we saw these last 2 nights is just kind of weird. I'm not making too much of it. In general, there's been a lot of zeros in this series, and I expect more of that here in a pitcher-friendly park there in San Diego. I'm going to B-pick on the under 7.5. Weather-wise, probably not going to affect much here. It's a little bit warmer for San Diego standards. We're in the mid-70s today, but the wind will be blowing across, and in general, it's more about that's just a pitcher-friendly ballpark in this one. Kyle Freeland versus Joe Musgrove. Freeland gets an exact average rating in my database, but the key here for Freeland is that the Padres all of a sudden now are a little bit left-handed and switch hitter heavy. And of course, switch hitters in general perform better as left-handed hitters than as right-handed hitters. You got a switch hitter, of course, with Soto, and then you have Bell as a lefty. And so given that you have a couple of the key additions there on that side of the plate, the Padres offense doesn't project as strong against lefties as they do against righties. Of course, they already have several lefties and switch hitters in their line. Of course, they did get rid of Hosmer, but they still have several others. So given that they're a little bit heavier on that side, I just don't project them as well against lefties. So I think that helps Freeland out in this situation and can maybe take him from average facing a great offense to average facing a good offense. Again, as the Padres against lefties only project at a 112, which is still good, but it's not into the 120s that they project against right-handed pitching. So I think that helps keep this a little bit lower scoring. Of course, Musgrove is fantastic, a 2.65 ERA. Advanced metrics say it should be in the low 3s. A little bit deflated, probably because the park he's pitching in. But for the most part, I expect him to be able to continue with these results all season because he's still going to keep pitching in that park. Rockies offense does much better against lefties. Of course, Musgrove is a so again, I think everything sets up to be an under here. We'll hold our breath early on in that first inning to hopefully avoid the fate we saw the last 2 nights. But otherwise, I think it's a lower scoring game. Model says 7.4, but I like these odds, and I think that 7 is a very likely outcome here. I think we can say under this total, B grade there. With regards to the side, I think it's priced really well. Model says 247. So I'll take a flyer on the Rockies at plus 245, but not one I'm excited about. Really, it's just the price of in the upper 200s, approaching 300. It's just too much for this Padres team. They're really good, but I still think they're behind the Dodgers with regards to their offense, with regards to the bullpen, and with regards to the starting pitcher. I have them slightly behind the Dodgers in 2 of those 3 categories and a little bit further behind in with regards to the bullpen. So I just don't think they should be seeing quite Dodger prices. I think they're really good. They're much improved. I think they've gone from an above average team to a very good one. But I just don't think this price is really great to invest in the Padres. On the first several here, they probably win again, but it's just not something I'm excited about laying a price like that. So I'll take a chance with the underdog here and say the odds are worth the payout if we get it, but it's not a great investment. I probably lean more pass than Rockies on this one personally and focus here on the under. Again, I think things set up with regards to lefty-righty pitching and with regards to a pitcher's park, I think it sets up really well for an under. Tonight, game 7:05 Eastern, first pitch, Nats at the Phillies. A warm one in Philadelphia, low 90s to start, mid 80s to close, and the winds will be blowing out at 5 to 10 miles an hour. Paulo Espino versus Noah Syndergaard. Espino, a guy who, again, the model does not believe in whatsoever. He does have a 3.78 ERA, but the advanced metrics say it should be a full run higher than that. So a guy we're looking to fade because I think his results are a little bit his ERA is a little deflated. I don't think he's nearly as good as that ERA indicates. We'll be facing a Phillies offense that still rates above average, according to the model. And Noah Syndergaard will get the ball for the Phillies. Again, maybe slightly better than average, not as good as he used to be, but still an okay pitcher. I love the Phillies here at minus 217. It's a big number, but it's still an A-grade play here. The Phillies have an edge everywhere in this game, and they're at home. Model says it should be 265. Again, we got the Nats against the Mets in that first game, or in that game 2 nights ago, that first game of the new Nats without Soto and Bell. At this point, we faded them yesterday, and I think fading them again today makes a lot of sense. They aren't a good team, and I think we need the prices to adjust for that. We've been kind of fading them all season, and I think we're going to keep mostly doing that until the prices start getting too ridiculous. And I don't think this is a ridiculous price here for, again, it's Phillies team that we've been backing. Got an A-grade winner with them yesterday as an underdog against the Braves. A Phillies team, I keep trying to tell y'all, they're right behind the Mariners, in my opinion, with regards to the fact that they're just continue to be underrated. They're not great, right? And the Mariners are a great team, but they're a good team. The Phillies are a little bit, one step behind that. I think the Phillies aren't as good as the Mariners are, but they're decent enough. They're kind of good. They're maybe good. They're good-ish, right? But they're being priced as if they're, a mediocre team, and they've got more talent than that. So like I said, I think this price is too low. It's the big favorite of the day that I think is really okay to throw in your parlays if that's the angle you like. I'm very comfortable with this price. Again, model says 265, so really anything less than 250 I think is still a decent investment, even though it's a high price. And I like this over 9. It's a B-grade play for me, especially at minus 104 odds. Model says 9.5. It's a hot day. Winds be blowing out. Nats have no relievers. I think the Phillies score a lot of runs, similar to what happened yesterday with the Mets. I think the Mets got to the over by themselves, and I think the Phillies have a good chance to do that as well. Braves at the Mets, 7:10 Eastern, first pitch, mid-80s to start, low 80s to close. Winds will be blowing out at 5 to 10 miles an hour. But, of course, you have a pitcher-friendly park there at Citi Field and two pretty good pitchers in Kyle Wright and Carlos Carrasco, both guys who have been really good stories this year and have been pretty profitable to back. And that's why I'm on the under 8 here with a B-grade play. Minus 104 is nice odds. Model says 7.6. The model thinks 7.5 is the right total. And I tend to agree here. We do have a wind blowing out. In that park, it's still fairly pitcher-friendly. And I think these two pitchers can keep the ball in the yard, and that's going to be the key here to staying under. Like I said, I like Wright and I like Carrasco. I think under makes a lot of sense. Both offenses are above average. Both bullpens are still pretty fantastic. And so we'll have good pitching all day. And when the pitching is matched up fairly well with the hitting this season, whether it's been good on good, great on great, or bad on bad, the pitching has tended to win out. So I think 8's just too high of a number here. Both these teams can put up some runs. Both these pitchers and the relievers are capable of shutting them down. Under 8 is a B-grade play for me. And with regards to the side, I think it's priced fairly well. The model says it should be Mets minus 115. I'll take Mets minus 115 with a C-grade pick. I just don't think there's any value on it. If you could get Mets minus 110, I think that's probably a better investment. But at minus 115, I just don't think there's enough value to get excited about, especially given that Kyle Wright's been a guy that we have really tried not to fade this season and tried to back him as much as possible. So unless I'm getting something closer to even money, it's not a situation where I like going against Kyle Wright. The Mets are at home. The Mets are a really good team. Bottom line is the model says this is basically Mets home field advantage is the difference in this game. which kind of makes sense because the Braves would have a little bit of an advantage with relievers and a little bit of advantage with I have Kyle Wright better than Carlos Carrasco, but then the Mets counteract that with a better offense. All that washes out. Like I said, I think this one's priced fairly well with regards to the side. Instead, I'm mainly hoping that we can stay under with two pitchers and two sets of relievers here that I really trust in a pitcher-friendly ballpark. 17 Eastern first pitch, Astros at the Guardians. It'll be low 80s to start, upper 80s to upper 70s to close in Cleveland. Winds will be blowing out, but should stay under 5 miles an hour, so no real wind effect there. Justin Verlander versus Zach Plesac. I mean, not much to say about Verlander, 181 ERA, having a fantastic season, again, defying father time. Key with Verlander, the advanced metrics, I've talked about this with him before, do say his ERA should be in the low threes, not in the upper ones. So it's quite a difference here. It's about a full 1.5. Does that necessarily mean that I expect Verlander to start pitching poorly going forward? No, it doesn't. It just means that what I do expect from Verlander is maybe a few more 7 innings and 3-run type outings rather than the 7 innings, 1 run that he's been doing. He's still really good. I still think he's going to go out and throw really well. I just think he's probably more likely to give up an extra run or two somewhere in there. He's really limited the home run ball this year, and that's been what's inflated his ERA in years past. And home runs are extremely random with regards to pitchers giving them up. And you say, we have to remember, conditioned on the fact that they're major league pitchers, it's extremely random. Right now, if I went out there and pitched, I'd give up a lot of home runs. I'm also topping out these days at my age, upper 70s, on a good day. So they would tee off on me. I'd hang too many sliders and it wouldn't be pretty, right? But major league pitchers, once we get to that caliber, there's really no rhyme or reason to pitchers allowing home runs. The biggest correlating factor is fly ball percentage. But otherwise, the difference between a home run and a warning track fly ball is inches off the bat, centimeters off the bat. It's just such a small thing that's really not much in a pitcher's control. He's limited the home run ball this season. I'm not saying I expect him to give up a ton of home runs going forward. It's just if he doesn't continue to have that luck, he's going to give up an extra run or two here and there. And that's, again, why the underlying metrics say that 181 ERA is a little bit of smoke and mirrors. Again, Verlander's still great, just maybe not Herculean like the ERA would indicate. So I still think he's really good. Model still says he's one of the top pitchers in the game. I just don't know if he can continue to do to pitch as well as he's looked lately. Zach Plesac will get the ball for the Guardians. 4.33 ERA, underlying metrics line up right with that. Talking about a fairly just average run-of-the-mill pitcher here. I'm on the Guardians tonight at plus 158. I think there's some value here, and it gets a B grade for me. I can't go A grade. Mathematically, the model would say that there's an A grade edge, but I can't go A grade here, fading Verlander, knowing how well he's pitching, and knowing that this Astros offense can just go off on anybody at any time and make them look pretty silly. So I'm downgrading it to a B grade. We get a pretty good payout if we win anyway. We're already going to win more than 3 units. So I like the Guardians here in this one. I think they have enough of a chance to make this a good investment opportunity for us. Model says it should be Astros minus 127. They do have an edge with regards to the starting pitcher, and they do have an edge with regards to the offense, but they're on the road. And relief core-wise, the model now likes the Guardians relievers about as much as the Astros and thinks their back-end trio is actually better than the Astros back-end trio. Guardians are a strong team, a team we've been backing a lot. For the most part, it's been profitable for us. I think they have a chance in this game. Model says they win 44% of the time, and if you can get a 44% winner at plus 158, that makes a lot of sense. The other key in this one, again, the Astros we talked about are a team that's still fairly right-handed heavy, so it gets a decreased grade on offense facing a righty and an increased grade facing a lefty. And so because Plesac's a righty, I think the Astros have a should win this game, but have a less likely chance than maybe your first, you think of when you think about that offense and think about Verlander, because I just don't think it sets up great for either one with regards to, as I mentioned, I'm not sure Verlander can continue this torrid pace he's on. And this Astros offense, again, I feel more comfortable facing a lefty than a righty. So I think the Guardians have a shot here. Plus 158 offers pretty good value. It's a B-grade play for me. Another total I think is priced really well. I'll take a flyer on the under just because it's at plus 108 here for under 7.5. It's pretty equivalent to under 8 with a little bit of juice. I think under is probably the way I'd look here, but again, another total that's priced really well and hard to find an edge in my opinion. 7:10 Eastern, first pitch, Rays at the Tigers. Mid-80s to start, upper 70s to close in Detroit. Winds will be blowing in at about 5 miles an hour throughout the night, so not too much of an effect there. Jeffrey Springs versus Drew Hutchison. Springs is a guy, 2.70 ERA, but the underlying metrics say that should be in the mid-threes. And a guy we're not quite sure exactly what sort of length he'll offer, which puts a little bit of an extra variability on him. Kind of an average pitcher, maybe a little bit better than the model thinks, but probably not by too much. Drew Hutchison for the Tigers is one of the worst starting pitchers in my database. A 4.53 ERA, and the underlying metrics say it actually should be a tiny bit worse than that. Not a guy I have a lot of faith in. Relief-wise, once we get to the relievers, though, this is probably a wash. Offensively, the Rays aren't great, but they're better than the terrible Tigers offense. Rays should win this game, but the model thinks that it's just too big of a price to lay here with Tampa. Says Rays minus 149, so price in the 170s and 180s on Tampa. It's just a pass for me there. It's either Tigers or pass. I'll take a flyer on the Tigers plus 159. Given that I think the model may underrate Springs a little bit, I can't give this a B grade. Again, model says Rays minus 149, but if it is underrating Springs, like I think it might be, maybe it should be Rays minus 155. So maybe still a tiny bit of an edge here on the Tigers, but not enough to get excited about, especially not enough to get excited about with that offense, as bad as they can look at times. But I just think the Rays are too big of favorites to back on the road, in my opinion. Model says total of 8.6. I'll go over 8, but again, just a lean, just a C grade here. It is juiced, and on top of that, you can't feel that confident anytime you take an over involving the Tigers because they can always somehow score one run no matter what the environment is, weather-wise and pitching-wise. So because the Tigers struggle so much offensively, it's not an over that I feel confident with. But again, mathematically, the model says that it is a little short. So a tough game to peg, in my opinion, and again, just one where I think there's better investment opportunities. One of those would be starting right after that at 7:40 Eastern with the Blue Jays and the Twins. Low 80s to start, mid 70s to close. Wind will be blowing in at about 10 miles an hour for most of the game. Maybe shifting to a cross by the end, but still probably helping the pitchers out a little bit. Alek Manoah versus Sonny Gray, two pitchers that I don't think the discrepancy is as big as you might think. A guy in Manoah we've talked about a lot here, 2.43 ERA, but the underlying metrics say it should be about a run and a quarter higher than that. So Manoah good, just not as good as that ERA would indicate. Again, the model thinks Manoah is better, but only by a little bit. And I tend to agree. He's the pitcher I'd rather have over Sonny Gray, but not by that much. Relief corps-wise, Blue Jays with a little bit of an addition there gets to above average, but the Twins in their additions now puts them well above average. Twins actually having some relievers here might be the difference in this game. Both offenses are really good. And again, the Blue Jays offense, one that really excels against lefties and is just good against righties, not great. Given the splits for both teams on righties here, I actually have the Twins as a slightly better offense in this game, with it being a righty versus a righty. And again, the Twins have an edge with relievers. The only edge the Jays have is that their starting pitchers are a little bit better. But Minnesota at home, I don't really think should be an underdog here. Plus 108 is fantastic value. It's an A-grade play for me on the Twins. Model says the Twins should be a minus 115 favorite. Basically says that it should be just home field advantage. Says that the offenses are mostly rounding error off and that the Twins' advantage in the bullpen counteracts the fact that Manoah might be a little better than Gray. All that becomes a wash. Twins should have home field advantage. And so since they should be more like a minus 110, minus 115 favorite, the fact that the Twins are at plus 108 is an A-grade play. Lots of value on the Twins. Anytime you have a slight edge in your advantage on the coin toss and you can get plus odds, that's great value to attack. And with regards to the total, I like this under 8.5 at minus 117. It's a B-grade play. Model says 8.2. Winds will be blowing in. Will be cooling off as it goes along. I think this under makes a lot of sense. I'd hang this under at 8. Both offenses are good, but again, both pitchers are good enough to match that. Like I said earlier, anytime we have pitching matching the hitting, pitching has won out more than the other way around. So I'll take this under 8.5 with a B grade. I think it's a lower scoring game. I think the Twins got a really good shot. I think it's a game that's 2-2 late. Then I don't really know who wins, but at plus 108, I love being on the Twins, given that they have the better bullpen. I think they have a little bit of an edge there and are more likely to pull out this low-scoring game than the Blue Jays are. 7:45 Eastern, Cubs at the Cardinals. This will be game 2 of the doubleheader. No line out right now, no official line here. We haven't confirmed the starting pitcher for the Cubs. It looks to be Caleb Killian and a bullpenish type game. He's a guy who doesn't project to go very deep in this one. He is in my database, but he doesn't pull up as a starter in the database. Specifically, what that means is he just doesn't get a rating because we don't have enough data on him, we don't project him to go enough innings, and or he's not good enough to really warrant being included in the rating system, because given that the rating system balances out around 100, if I add all these type pitchers in, it's gonna skew the results. So it's not that he's not in the database, he's just not in the database getting a grade with the rest of the starters. He can maybe go 4 or 5 innings, but he's not a guy that we project to go deep. He's not a guy we project to do great. He is a prospect. He does have some upside, but it's not a situation where we think he can come in and be a George Kirby and really show something here early on. Versus Jose Quintana, newly acquired from the Pirates. Quintana's an above-average pitcher, having a pretty solid season. The underlying metrics back up his 3.50 ERA, and so that's about exactly as good as he should be. Cardinals, again, have a lot of edges here. They're going to have an edge with regards to the starter, with regards to the bullpen, depth on starter, offense. Cardinals have edge everywhere in this one. I will probably be on the Cardinals again if I had to guess. The model says Cardinals minus 178 and a total of 8. So we'll see where those numbers come out, and I will tweet a play and add that to the sheet later on. 8:05 Eastern, first pitch, White Sox at the Rangers. Johnny Cueto versus Cole Ragans. Ragans is another pitcher that just doesn't make it into the rating as a starter. Again, not that he's not in the database, just including him in the grades would skew other people's grades. And so he just doesn't get a grade. Not someone that we're expecting dominance from the Rangers. We're expecting Cueto to outperform him tonight. Cueto with that 2.86 ERA. Now, again, that's a lot of smoke and mirrors. Underlying metrics say it should be in the low 4s. So Cueto's solid. I don't think he's going to be terrible. We've seen some terrible Johnny Cueto outings over the last several years, but I don't think he's as good as that ERA is. So I'm expecting a little bit of regression to the mean for him, but still an edge for the White Sox and the starting pitcher. Edge in the bullpen, again, that White Sox bullpen, at least is solid, especially in the back end. They have a few guys that are pretty good. The Rangers bullpen I don't trust whatsoever. But with regards to the offense, of course, now the White Sox facing a lefty, that gives them a little bit of a boost. They also have an edge there. On the road, I think they should be favored, but I don't think they should be favored by quite as much as they are. Minus 127 is a little too steep. I'll take the Rangers at plus 117. Only a lean, though. Model says 113. Not enough value to get excited about, and not enough value given that there's just so much variability around Ragans. With a guy like that coming up, there's a lot of outcomes on the table. And on average, I would, if this game were to happen 10 times, 20 times, 100 times, whatever, you kind of expect maybe a below average performance for him, but there's just more variability with him than most pitchers. And so because we just don't really know what to expect, I have less confidence in this number that I'm hanging here with the White Sox at minus 113. So I'll be on the Rangers, the plus odds at home, but it's not one that I think has enough value to get that excited about. And I feel the same about the total. Model says 8.5 exactly. So I'll take a chance with the over here, again, knowing the White Sox at lefties better, and knowing that I don't trust that Rangers bullpen at all. If there's some runs late, I think that at least benefits the over. But in general, I think this game's priced pretty well and not one that I'm excited to invest in. Closing us out here at 8:10 Eastern, we've got the Red Sox and the Royals. A warm one in Kansas City. We're going to start off almost at 90 degrees, close in the low 80s. A slight breeze in, but it should stay under 5 miles an hour, so not much of an effect there. Nick Pivetta versus Chris Bubik. Pivetta with a 4.47 ERA, advanced metrics, and maybe a little bit better than that, but for the most part, you just have an average starting pitcher here for the Red Sox. Bubic for the Royals here, a 5.45 ERA, advanced metrics, say about a half run better, but in general, not a guy who gives you a lot of depth, and when he goes, the innings he throws still aren't that good. So an edge to the Red Sox here on the starting pitcher. Of course, edge to them on the bullpen, edge to them on offense. Model says Red Sox minus 127. I'll take the Red Sox at minus 130, just a lean, though. A game I think is priced fairly well. I don't like laying too big of a price with the road team here. Just not enough value to get excited about. This Red Sox team is decent. They're better than the Royals, but on the road, just be careful about how big of a number we lay. I'll lay minus 130, just a C grade, though. And if it gets any bigger than that, it really turns into a pass for me. It's just tough to think there's a lot of value here at this number. But at 130, I think it's still an okay investment. An investment I like a little more than that is the over 9. Again, minus 104 offers good value here. It's a B grade play. The model says 9.2. It's a hot day. No real wind effect. An average pitcher versus below average pitcher. Red Sox probably about average relievers. Royals relievers below average. Of course, the issue is the Royals offense, not great. Even worse now that they've traded away 2 of their better hitters. But in general, I'm trusting that this weather can get us to 9, that the pitching isn't good enough. Hopefully the warmer day can help us at least get to 9 for the push and a chance to get over for the win. I think there'll be more runs in this game in general. But again, can't get an A-grade play because this Royals offense could easily only score 2 runs. And if that happens, it's going to be a little harder for us to get to this number of 9. So can't be an A-grade because the Royals offense is involved. But in general, the weather sets up to at least make getting to 9 more likely than not. So I'll recap the A picks that I've got for today. Starting us off early, I've got the over 8 as my favorite total in Brewers Pirates. I've got the Cardinals minus 152 in game 1. And again, a pick for game 2 coming later. I'll probably be on the Cardinals again, and it might be an A grade depending on what number we can get. I've got the Phillies at minus 217 against the Nats at home. And I've got the Twins at home against the Blue Jays at plus 108. And that's all I have for you today. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Picks with the Professor. Reminder to check out the Google Sheet for model picks, projections, and results. You can find that link and more at the website, www.pickswiththeprofessor.com. If you haven't done so yet, please click the subscribe button to ensure all the sports betting content we provide on this channel is dropped right into your feed. I will see you tomorrow, and until then, remember, you can eat your betting money, but please don't bet your eating money.